Hello and welcome to this special edition of the AppDevAngle. My name is Paul Nashawaty, coming to you live from the show floor at Dynatrace Perform 2026. I'm joined by Michael and Andrew from Dynatrace. Hey guys, how you doing today?
Doing well.
Great to have you on the podcast. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Michael Beemer. I'm a product manager at Dynatrace, and I'm a co-founder of Open Teacher, which is a CNCF project.
Super excited to have you here. Andrew.
I'm Andrew Norris, Principal Product Manager here at Dynatrace. I was the co-founder and CEO of DevCycle until about 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's exciting news too, right? I mean, so both of these, this topic we're looking at, the show is really exciting. How's the show going for you?
It's going well.
It's been great, yeah. First time here, and it's great to meet and hear the stories of all the customers that love and use Dynatrace.
Super exciting, and I've noticed a pivot from year over year. It's from the IT ops play to the developer play, right? Where we're seeing a lot happening, especially with the DevCycle play. So let's talk a little bit about that. There's the DevCycle acquisition. It fits into the Dynatrace's future story and story now. But considering that Dynatrace was really focused on IT ops in the past, what does it mean for having DevCycle into the portfolio?
You want to start?
Yeah, sure. For me, it's like a culmination of a few years worth of work. So, developers really like feature flags. Once you get used to it, it's like the only way you want to ship software. There are some observability gaps though right now. And so that's the thing that we're aiming to fix. And I think once you have the observability gap managed, you can really start doing some more interesting, sophisticated release scenarios. So that's where I see it going and what we're going to be building over the next year.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Andrew, how do you see this fitting into the Dynatrace's end-to-end vision?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working with enterprise companies for over 10 years that are shipping code using feature flags. And the thing that we hear again and again is really getting a good understanding of what's running where with their flags, how they're going through different stages of releases, and getting the maximum amount of context around, is it safe to actually release widely at this point? And connecting into the Dynatrace ecosystem gives us immediate access to all the logging, the error reporting, the session replays that give that context and basically the thumbs up to be able to say, okay, we're confident we can expand the rollout here from just internal to starting to roll out to external customers.
Yeah, I really like that approach. What I find really interesting is, I cover app dev and I practice. It's an area that's, certainly growing and a lot of organizations are modernizing and driving their applications forward. But developers are unique, right? They like their bespoke tools. What I like about this scenario here is you're able to harmonize the unified view, but allow for the developers to continue to use the tools that they're used to using. That's interesting in my mind.
Yeah, well, one of the beliefs that we've had since day one of DevCycle is to meet the developer where they are, have this work into their natural workflows. So whether they are using an IDE like VS Code, whether they're more comfortable in a CLI type environment or utilizing our APIs, we want to make the barrier to entry for developers to integrate creating feature flags as they're going through their day and coding as seamless and natural as possible, and really lower the barrier to entry to creating the flags and really having that value as you go through not just the development stage, but all the way to production release.
And Michael, we talked yesterday a little bit about this, about the harmonization of the Dynatrace unified view. What does that mean from your perspective, like for this acquisition and how it all comes together?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like feature flags basically start and end with developers. So it's good that DevCycle had focused on that use case so aggressively. Dynatrace really hits it more from like the operation perspective, and so it's going to be an interesting challenge in some ways for us to bring those two worlds together. So like developers have to love the tool, but then the teams responsible for like safe production releases also going to have to love it. And if we can like unify this platform together, I think it's going to kind of bring those teams together and hopefully break down some silos.
All right, so let's talk about this because you touched on something. There's software shipment, the SDLC, what that means across the CI/CD pipeline and driving that release code. Dynatrace is known for observability and reliability, right? That's kind of the history, the background, and what does this mean for like bringing DevCycle in to help close the developers building that, for shipping software across their SDLC?
Yeah, the way we look at it is feature flags are at a much more granular level of control for developers. So, as we're moving to a world where we're shipping multiple times a day, using agentic development tools to really speed up the pace of release, there's much more being created, and it's being sent out to production at a much more fast rate. So the whole concept of a feature flag really de-risks a lot of that by allowing you to go through your proper release structures, ship to production, understand what impact it's having live in front of users. Maybe those are internal users to start, but it still gives you that important context that, with non-deterministic code, with agentic development, sometimes that's very helpful to see actually how it's going to perform out of the lab and in reality. So really, we look at feature flagging as a safety factor increase for teams to really make sure that as they are building and releasing, they can both ship faster and have less risk overall once they're pushing their code out.
Okay, I understand the practitioner's day-to-day value. I totally get that. That makes sense. But Michael, maybe from the buyer's perspective, like where's the value to the buyer? Like, what does this mean to the C-level team? Is it faster time to value? Is it reliability? Like, what does it mean across the board?
So, I think it's going to be, the value is going to be across the board. So easier for developers, obviously, for that's how we want to add new features to your application.
Yep.
But then for the C level that you're talking about, we're really going to be more on the reliability of this, and how do you release software as quickly as possible, as safely as possible? If something goes wrong, how do you remediate it as quickly as possible? How do you get the information you need to properly fix it as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
So it's really just you want to be as non-disruptive to your end users as possible while still innovating. So I think that's the thing we're really going to help users, ship features faster and more confidently.
Yeah.
I'll add to that as well that we also bring A/B test experimentation to the table as well. Yeah. So really tying business impact and business metrics into the value of how these features are going out to the world. It's not just what technical impact, positively or negatively, you could be having, but how's this growing, things like maybe subscription signups or view time on page or ads presented to an end user. So all of those business level metrics, that gives you a much more fine-grained control and understanding of is this investment that we put our time and energy into actually worth it and creating value for the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I talk to C-level and business by the buyer side, the two main objections that they run into with projects and new projects is complexity and skill gap issues. Those are the main issues that they run into. Those challenges are interesting. It sounds like this solution is really kind of making it more frictionless and making it more easy to deploy across the SDLC. Would you agree with that, or is that?
I would. So feature flags definitely help in that way, but also add complexity. So hopefully we can mitigate that with deep observability, though. So if you think about it, we're basically adding new code paths that weren't there before, and so just shipping a binary is, that was kind of the old way to do it. You're releasing software and that was it. But now you're releasing software with different code paths that can be changed at runtime. So we're adding complexity, but we're also enabling these easier, quicker release processes. So that it's an interesting balance that we'll have to try to address.
It makes sense. And Andrew, you touched on something like that, testing and trying experimenting and such. How would you advise existing Dynatrace, developers or platform engineering teams? Can they use DevCycle today, and what do they get going? What's the ramp up to?
Yeah, so we're at the very starting line of this, obviously, being 2 weeks in, but DevCycle can continue to operate as it has been for over 10 years, helping companies from the very largest to up and coming growth startups, putting this into their daily workflow. So if they're interested in trying out, we have a actually completely free tier that developers can sign up for today, get hands-on with the platform. We have really deep and good docs, onboarding platforms, example apps. We actually, the end of last year, replaced our whole onboarding flow with a MCP first approach to implementing the SDK. So really lowering the time and effort to get hands-on with the product as low as possible. Over the course of the next year, we're going to be working to build the capabilities that we have with DevCycle into the native Dynatrace platform and really immediately get those easy wins of connecting the observability, the logging, the session replay, all of the capabilities that Dynatrace has to offer, and give you sort of that full 360 view at a feature level of not just what's happening, but what are my controls to actually impact it and positively, ensure the experience that gets the end user is as perfect as possible.
Yeah, I like that you focus in on the workflows and the outcomes, and not so much like, let me tell you about the bits and bytes. Although I really love the labs here at this show. It's awesome. It really gets down into the tech. I was really having some fun over here with some of the equipment. But let's talk about it from this perspective. When we look at feature management, you mentioned that it adds a little bit of complexity, right? But it also allows you to do experimentation and observability together while reducing that risk. Can you kind of double click down on that and talk about that from that perspective?
So yeah, I mean, really our goal will be how do we give feature level observability? So, typically you'd have like a service level observability and you see like trends there, but you don't really know what the impact of that feature is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working towards. I think once you do that, then you can actually tie that back to some of the business value that Andrew's talking about. You can see, well, did that feature move the needle like you expected?
Yeah.
And that's where, both for performance and the business perspectives.
And I'd also say for teams that are worried about technical debt that gets built up using feature flags, because over time you could potentially have hundreds or thousands of those flags live. The reason we're called DevCycle is because we believe in full lifecycle feature flagging. So that involves both tracking when a feature flag has to run its course, when it's no longer being used. We've created some really great tools to clean up your code along the way and really keep that sort of sense of momentum without creating a huge backlog of additional work for engineering and product teams to sort through.
Yeah, it's also important to note here, I know in my research, I find that 24% of respondents of my recent research indicated that they want to ship code on an hourly basis, right? So, but yet only 8% are able to do so. And because of that, I think it's important to note that this doesn't slow down the release cycles. It actually gives you the insight so you can see what's happening and then determine what makes the most sense. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's feature flagging at this core is separating your deployments from releases and being able to deploy a lot faster on that hourly basis if you want. I mean, that's what we do internally. We use DevCycle to build DevCycle, and we'll continue to do so in the native platform. But the whole idea is you ship it to prod, you see what the impact of it, you target a smaller audience to get it, and once you get to level of comfortability with it, with the observability play, you'll be able to really understand, am I in a good place to get this out live? And especially as our teams are starting to use more and more agentic development in what we're doing, we're having not even non-technical engineers starting to commit code, and it can go through that workflow really seamlessly.
Does that have, and I can't believe it took us this long to talk about AI, does that have anything to do with AI and having natural language in there and natural language support?
Yeah, it does. One of the big use cases of feature flags increasingly is how are you testing what is the right model to use in different scenarios, the tuning and the fine tuning of the inputs into the different agentic models and figure out which is appropriate for different user groups and different use cases. So hooking those into feature flags is a very common use case that we're seeing more and more being adopted by the customers that we're using and the conversations that we're having. So I think, I look at feature flagging as an unlock for agentic development at an enterprise level, because you can move fast, you can have that context and have the safety factor that comes with building enterprise software.
Makes sense. All right, so I got a question. So we're sitting here a year from now at Perform 2027, okay? Michael, what do you see the investment of Dynatrace and the developer-centric kind of view? How do you see it changing and morphing from today and a year from now?
So a year from now, my hope would be, Dynatrace and probably the industry starting to go in this direction is like, we're moving kind of beyond observability. So just like passively watching the system behavior, but being more of an active participant. So feature flags, I think, are an ideal way to tap into that. It's, the developer saying like, this is an important code path. This is a feature that's important to my business. Dynatrace, like, tune this to work best for my business.
Makes sense. Same question. What are your thoughts? A year from now, you have this acquisition, it's 2 weeks in. What does it mean?
Well, I think it's really bringing to the developers as a first-party user and partner with the existing SRE profile that is using Dynatrace today. A feature management tool is something that a developer is using on a daily basis. So they're going to be in the platform, seeing the value, seeing the context on a day-in, day-out basis. And I think bringing them into the ecosystem and into sort of the partnership with the rest of their organization is only going to produce a ton of value for the customers and just overall a better experience, a more reliable experience of the code and the products that they're shipping.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so I know we're wrapping up here, but closing words, where can the audience learn more about this? There's a lot we talked about, and if they just want to get started, depending on where they are in their journey, where would they go?
For sure. So go to devcycle.com. As I said, we're going to continue to operate as we have been. We already have a native deep integration with Dynatrace. If you're an existing Dynatrace customer, you're ready to go. We're built on open feature, so everything that we do it has that transportability that an open standard provides. Or if you're already using a platform that supports open feature, it makes it very easy to migrate and test out DevCycle in production. That free tier is a great place to get started. We have a full self-service model if you want, or come and reach out and talk to us, and we'd be happy to talk about the enterprise capabilities and things like SSO and SAML or workflow approvals that large businesses need as well. So, and the commitment that we have is we're going to continue to we're going to make it easy to migrate this into the native experience once it's live, maybe in a year or so. And work with you to ensure that process is as seamless as possible.
Very cool, very cool. Michael, closing words, what are your thoughts?
It's going to be a fun ride. This is a very exciting moment for me. I think developers, teams really need feature flags. The observability aspect makes it all the more interesting, and I think teams are going to really, really enjoy using what we're building.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me today in this episode, and thank you to the audience for attending and watching and tuning into the special episode of the AppDevAngle on theCUBE, your leading source for tech news.